And we invite you, last, dear listener, dear viewer, whoever is connecting with us in this space, we invite you, divine, queer, transgender variant ancestor, into this space that we are creating here together. Yes. Thank you so much, Michael, for being here, for opening up this gorgeous space together. My body is tingling. I'm feeling so much energy moving through me right now. And whoever is watching this, I also hope you're feeling that energy too. And I want to just say how happy I am for us to be speaking together today, and for you and I to be the first to have a conversation about this. It feels so divinely led. It's like only way to say it. It feels very inspired, and I'm just so thrilled to be able to weave you into this project and to connect you with all the other folks who are going to be a part of this project. And just would love for you to share with our communities who are coming here to join, to watch this video. Would love for you to share about yourself, introduce who you are, share a little bit about how you've started to commune with ancestors, and we'll start to open up the conversation there.
Thank you so much for involving me in this project and this conversation. I can't get enough time to talk about my connection to ancestors, the process of discovering ancestors, and how extremely important channeling the talents, the intentions, the ideas, and the wisdom of my ancestors has been to every aspect of my life, especially my art practice, especially how I relate to other people. My name is Michael Espinoza. I was born in Colorado, and I am multiracial Latinx. Part of my Latinxicity is recognizing that a part of that identity is that my indigeneity has been stripped away from me as a part of what colonialism does to bodies. I have the brown skin of my forebearers and my ancestors, but the culture of my ancestors has been taken away from me through a process of eliminating native languages, through the process of eliminating native lands. And I wasn't brought up in a culture around my native heritages, but I'm really interested in reconnecting with them. And part of doing that has been calling back to my ancestors. Even if my family doesn't recognize the ways in which those ancestries have had an impact on me, I can still reach past them and make a meaningful connection through a lot of spiritual tools that I use to have a meaningful connection with my natal ancestors. Through my art practice, I started recognizing that there were other ancestors who were calling to me. I am a queer identified non-binary person. I found that when I was doing ancestor work, there were other people, other presences that were also reaching into my body and asking for my assistance and my help. Those presences are made up of queer people. Queer people have existed in all times. And in a lot of cases, especially again due to colonialism, a lot of those queer traditions have been erased and the identities of queer people have been hidden. So I I think it's important. It's not easy, but it's important to call back to queer people of all time, especially those who were lost to disease, that were lost to persecution, that were lost to closets, and were lost to fatal sadness. And a lot of the work that I do now is inviting those people to, those ancestors to come forward and for me to do mutual healing with them and build a big, beautiful future with their help.
Mm, wow. You touched upon so many things, Michael, that I'm like just really sitting with like the emotion that came forward as you were sharing all those divine queer people that have been lost or that have, had to hide. Definitely feel them present and also feeling the grief and sadness of feeling that disconnect of feeling like they had to hide or not be present, not be fully embraced. And I really was struck with you sharing both about your indigenous ancestry and also about that disruption that colonization has brought in. I can really resonate with that as someone who was also raised Latinx and was not raised with my indigenous ancestry, culture, community because of colonization. And also, we can also name colonization as being a big part, right, of the disconnect that has happened from our queer, transgender, expansive ancestors as well. And so this is really profound work. And as you shared, there are so many beings out there that have been obfuscated, erased, silenced, minimized, or had to hide for their own reasons of protection. And just really struck with this intention of your practice to really commune, to bring them together, to weave them back into our timelines, into our lives as well. And I was really struck also with what you shared of them kind of moving into your body or coming into you, reaching into you. Would love to hear more about that just because I could so relate to that, that visceral, that emotional, many times even sounds or images that ancestors will use to call us, to pull us.
Yeah, it's just beginning to come to my awareness that that's even happening. I think that we all have the capacity to lend our bodies to the talents of ancestral beings, and I think the only requirement to do that is to be open, to open ourselves spiritually, open our emotions, open our minds to the possibility that we don't necessarily have to toil and grind ourselves into pain and suffering to be able to have talent and to express talent. And also I don't even think that like what is usually regarded as being talent, and I'm speaking very specifically as an artist, but in a lot of other ways too.
Right.
Um, I don't think that what is commonly regarded as talent really has to be the only way in which we are able to express ourselves. We all are able to accept gifts if we're open to them. I have a very specific named ancestor, my grandmother Genevieve, who is currently lending me the talent of being able to use my hands to make embroidered work. My grandmother would spend all of her alone time making embroidered work, embroidering napkins and tablecloths and curtains and towels and all these items of the everyday things that you were expected to always have in your home. And every time she would visit us, she would bring us a big pile of things that she had embroidered. I never saw her do it. I never saw her do it. And it was almost as though her her talent was a divine one, like it came from somewhere not of this world. I was always just really mystified and very attracted to the idea of making things out of tiny little threads and tiny little stitches. And she's always been at the center of my altar practice. My altar practice is reverence for ancestors, whatever that looks like. It's a pretty simple. I mean something very simple when I say altar practice. It just means creating an altar and using that altar to commune with ancestors.
Right.
Um, she, as a Catholic grandmother, would had many, 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 many images of the Virgin Mary in her home, and I always associate the Virgin Mary with her presence. And a Virgin Mary sculptural object was something that she left me when she died. This object is at the center of my altar practice. It's a central figure in my altar practice, and I believe that my devotion to Mary in that practice called forward my grandmother. My grandmother saw my need to borrow a talent for my art practice, knowing that my art practice, my intention behind it was to create value and good into the world. So it's my belief that as an ancestor, she's lent me that talent to be able to make embroidered work.
I'd love to hear you share a little bit more about this notion of borrowing talent, of talent being given from, a sacred, celestial, divine space, and also being something that can be shared between people across time and space as well. I'd love to hear just a little bit more, especially if this is maybe a concept that might be new for someone, because I can really resonate with that, and I really have witnessed in my own life that opening up, as you're saying, that opening up your heart, your mind's eye, your spirit to receiving can bring such an abundance of creativity, of projects, and of abilities and gifts that potentially were not there before.
Yeah, I first of all, I don't want to come off as magic. It's I also had to put my body through learning. I had
Hmm.
to accept the gift by trying and failing at making. So it's not, I just want to make it very clear that I still had to try, I still had to be frustrated, and I
Hmm.
still had to do intentional learning and intentional practice to receive the gift of embroidery, to
Right.
receive any of the talents that I have as an artist. But what sustains me and what allows me to continue doing this and to build this practice and to do more and more and more and reach higher and make bigger is the willingness that I believe is like divinely inspired. My ability to continue to stay in this one lane, in this one and to follow my passion for this one type of art making and to continue doing it. I have a very capricious mind that will wander and will try new things and abandon things very quickly. And the fact that I'm able to do this one thing in any sustained sort of way feels miraculous to me. And because of that miraculous feeling, I don't just chalk that up to it's good and I like it. I chalk it up to the fact that there is a very deliberate process of making offerings to the ancestors, asking for mutual healing, using a lot of that inspiration to help other people. So, finding ways to make sacrifices that are acts of service and to share and be of service to other people, and to always accept the guidance of the ancestors as it is and not fight back against it. I think it's very easy to get an answer from ancestors that you don't want and then shrug it off and try to do your own thing. In my experience, that never works. Um, I've also created altars. So an element of what I do as an artist is I create altars, and I've also created altars that were the dimensions were such that I could literally offer my body on the altar. Um,
Mm.
and I think that as long as I'm alive, as long as I have breath in my body, and as long as my heart is beating, and I have nothing else, I always have my body to lend as a sacrifice, as an offering to the ancestors. So, regardless of whether I have things that are commonly offered on an altar, whether or not I have incense, whether or not I have food or flowers or whatever it is, despite all the material things that I could offer up to the ancestors, I always have my body. And I think that offering my body as a practice has really made it possible for me to accept the gifts of the ancestors, to be able to use my hands for their purposes.
Mm. Yeah, it's like putting your body as that vessel, as that conduit, as that bridge, and also as you're naming, putting in that hard work, that time to be able to allow these messages to move through you, right? And using your body and having your body in some ways also get shaped by these practices too, right? And yeah, there's so much honoring and reverence that I feel in witnessing your work, and I'm so lucky to have had recently a studio visit with you. And I'm definitely going to be linking here in the description of this video a link to your website so people can see your artwork. But I would love to hear you talk a little bit about just how that kind of reverence, and also you've brought up the body and mortality. And I feel like a lot of the reverence that I have witnessed is connected to death and honoring the dead, or honoring passage and change. And would love to hear if you wanted to share a little bit about that and how you feel like that also really connects to your ancestral practices.
One of the things that I address a lot in my work, and that is at top of mind when I'm engaged in my altar practice, is the fact that a lot of my ancestors, especially claiming queer ancestors, were denied many of the privileges of life. And I named a lot of the reasons earlier, but I'll list
Right.
them again: disease, closets, fatal sadness, and persecution. I name those because those are some of the really specific reasons why queer people have been denied life in the way that we know it.
Right.
And not, I'm not talking about having been killed or dying necessarily, although that is absolutely included. But I don't think that if I had to hide my queerness from the world, that I would be living. I think that part of my life, my ability to live, is informed by my ability to be queer in public, to be queer with other people. So I think it's important to remember those deaths, even if they aren't attached to any specific people. Usually they're not, in my practice. And I I want to do healing. I think that death doesn't always mark a transition into serendipity and pleasure and joy. Sometimes death marks a an interruption, a cutting off, a denial, and I think that we all, as living beings, as conscious beings, deserve to experience joy, to be in community, to share pleasure. And when I'm dealing with ancestors who were denied those things, I think that it's important for me to be very conscious of death, such that I can be a conduit for helping to heal some of those hurts that were closed off and denied satisfaction in life. So I I think I've talked to a lot of other practitioners who are very weary of allowing unhealed entities into their practice, and I'm aware of that hesitation, and I try to be as careful as I can. But I also think that I have naturally a proclivity towards being able to withstand sadness.
Mm,
I believe that that is a natural talent or a ancestrally lent talent that I have
right.
to be able to be present with silence. I don't, or with sadness. I don't think that everyone has that particular talent, and knowing that I have that ability, I think that it's important to lend it out, to use it to help others to heal, to carry sadness with and for others so that healing can begin.
Yeah, this is such important work, and I really believe that, every person that does enter or get called to move into the role of being a healer, the role of being a conduit, an interlocutor, that these beings, when we're called into this space, that we're really guided towards who we're meant to connect with and support. And also, our bodies have a certain capacity to hold certain energies, right? And I think we can also be connected to certain lineages that are a part of these communities that are needing healing, right? That communities that are needing witnessing. And as you shared earlier, there's so many queer, trans, and gender expansive folks from across time and space that have had to hide, who did not get the rites of passage, who did not get that joy within their life. And who also did not get that honoring, that reverence, that love as they passed. And so there's definitely a deep, deep need for that witnessing, for that care, for that nurturance towards all of these beings, not only the ones that are quote unquote healed. And it makes me think, going back to what you shared at the beginning of this conversation around this idea of success. And I think a lot about like hierarchies and value systems that have shaped us and, shape who we see as worthy of love or shape who we see as worthy of healing or of having a good life. And there's so much that I'm really witnessing in your own, honoring and offering of yourself, that you're really working to heal a lot of these hierarchies also that have wounded so many people. And that is something that I really honor in your work and in your presence. And I think it's such a gift that you're able to bring to all of these beings who are needing this. Because I know, just in the sacred work that I've done in connecting with the spirit realm, that there are so many beings who are needing that sort of love and care. And it is difficult work. It's maybe sometimes dangerous work. And also, really hearing from you that your power, your capacity, the gifts that you've been lent are really created for this purpose, right? Of being able to offer yourself in that way.
Yeah, I don't think that I ever would have um, found uh, sadness as an important theme in my work. I don't think that I'm surprised. I'm always surprised by where my artwork takes me, uh, because I don't think that I'm particularly um, I don't have a special interest in carrying sadness. I don't have a special interest in death. When I'm not inhabiting being an artist and when I'm not inhabiting sacred space, I feel like I'm perfectly normal and funny and whatever, but I just there's this switch that happens that I don't feel like I'm in control of, that is attracted to bearing witness to sadness and ultimately to healing. I've experienced a lot of things in my life, a lot of it due to what we were talking about earlier with colonialism, erasing a lot of aspects of my past, various regimes to erase and invalidate my queerness.
Right.
I have a lot of healing to do around that. I have a lot of healing to do around reconciling my perceptions of worth with my gender identity and with my sexual expression. I have a lot of anxiety and difficulty understanding my racial identity as being both uh, is Latinx and is not Latinx in a country that prioritizes whiteness and there's a lot of healing to do, and I'm not the only person who needs to do the healing, who needs the healing. And I am not the only person in any time that needs that healing.
Mm, right.
Ultimately, uh, if we teach each other how to heal, and if we do the work of healing our ancestors, we can grow into a better, more prosperous future for everyone. And I've found that there's nothing I have to do alone, and that participating in communities, talking to other people who are willing to do the work with me, and asking for the assistance of, and for the cooperation of, and the guidance of the ancestors
Yes.
allows that healing to happen. If I try to do anything alone, I will fail. Um, I'm not averse to failure, but I know that when I'm in self-will, when I'm the only one in the driver's seat, I'm not going to come to a satisfying conclusion. But if I reach for guidance from ancestors, when I talk to people, when I intentionally build community, and the project is worthwhile, like healing, that the permission will always be granted, and success is all but assured.
Hmm. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. And yeah, I think that's one of the things that makes me really excited about this project is really inviting people into that deep well, that deep resource that we all have available as humans on this planet, and especially queer, trans, and gender expansive humans, that we have a deep well of energy that wants to support us, that wants to support our visions, that wants to lend its visions to us as well, and that also is asking, as you're saying, for healing, for transformation, for us who are living to be using our bodies, our creative practices, our visions, our voices in specific ways. And to me, that's something that's really, really exciting, that I'm really wanting to invite people into that dialogue, that sacred dialogue that many people have known about, but because of these disrupting factors, we've been separated from them. And I would just love for you to share a little bit about, what you've been naming this mutual healing that happens, this kind of trans linear, multilinear, multidimensional healing that happens across time and space, where as we offer love and healing and reverence for our ancestors, they offer it right back and really support us in those places, as you've been naming, where we're needing that support.
Yeah, it's important to recognize that queer, trans, gender non-binary, gender non-conforming, and genderqueer people have existed in all time. We are not an anomaly. We are not. Um, we are not new to this era. There's nothing about living in this future that uh, brings us into existence. We have existed in all time. I I think that there probably have been cultural practices that have recognized the innate sacredness of these identities. I experience that one of the most spiritually cohesive elements of my embodiment is my queerness. I am a spiritual being, but I'm a spiritual being also because of my queerness.
Yes.
I don't wish to assert that people who are not queer do not experience sacredness. Of course they do. I believe in the sacredness of all people and all beings.
Right.
Um, but I think that there is something special about living living in an identity that exists on a fuzzy boundary. I think that when we are neither one thing or another, uh, that there is a space that is very explicitly sacred that exists somewhere in the middle. And trans identities and queer identities exist somewhere in the middle outside of a very concrete understanding of what is and is not. And between what is and what is not exists the divine, exists the sacred. And so for me, I think that the sacredness of queer people has existed in all time, but there are earthly regimes, there are forces. Some of them are under the name of religion, some of them are political forces. I think there are forces that have perpetuated violence. There are many victims of this violence, there are many people who've experienced this violence, and the violence is not ended whatsoever. We are living with this violence today.
Yes.
And I think that it's very unique to be able to be aware of this violence, that it has existed in many iterations over time, and to be able to have the language to assert that we deserve to heal from that violence.
Yes.
That it is that, for one thing, we don't deserve to be treated with violence, that we don't deserve to have our bodies denigrated and our existences erased, and that we deserve to heal from that violence if we are to survive. So I have a lot of personal healing that I need to do around, you know, the identities that I discussed earlier. There's also various types of trauma that I've experienced in my life, and I became very isolated by that trauma. I think that one of the things that trauma does is it isolates us and makes our options very narrow. And having found ancestors who are willing to help me heal has really opened up my options and made my life a lot bigger. And that healing, it comes from offering myself to the ancestors, giving first, not asking for healing. I've never asked for healing from the ancestors. I've always offered to the ancestors to provide healing and to be a safe place for that healing to happen, as a vessel for that sadness. And because of my willingness to do that, I've received healing from the ancestors back. I think that being able to heal is a spiritual practice. Being aware of the need for healing is a spiritual practice. Any healing that we do is a radical act of love for the self. And there is no better energy in that I can think of that is more invested in healing than the ancestors.
Hmm. Yes. Wow. Literally getting so many chills as you're speaking. There's so much there. Really appreciate you sharing and bringing the word trauma in, and this fragmentation, this isolation that it has brought into our world. And that definitely, I think, has affected that relationship with ancestors. And I think that's really why, we're feeling so called as beings who are entering the healing realm, who are needing healing also, to connect, to reconnect, to bring out of that isolation, right? There have been so many ancestors who've been wanting to connect, who've been sending messages. And I don't know what your experience has been, but I think with that languaging of like them pulling, kind of into you, there's so many ways that they're trying sometimes to get our attention, to listen, to receive, right? And yeah, there's something that's so powerful in this fragmentation that we've experienced as a community, to really weave back together those bonds, those relationships. And as you're saying, that weaving, that connecting, that receiving a relationship is so powerful, and that healing goes in many different ways, right? It's a really beautiful holographic healing that starts to happen, where we receive healing, we offer healing, and it becomes this Yeah, gorgeous, like organism. That's like organisms, like the I love that word as like a intermingling organism where we're able to really hold each other in ways that we maybe because of this violence and because of this trauma, we're not allowed to, right? We're not really felt like we were able to. And I think also kind of naming in this too is that as queer transgender variant folks in the past have also had that sacredness as well and have been able to share it with their communities, have received it as well, and are wanting to receive it from us too. And so there is just like an opening that I'm really so grateful for your presence on this planet and your creative practice on this planet, that you're really opening that space up through your own practice, your personal practice, and also the practice that you're bringing into community, that you're sharing this in community, and that you're taking up space, you know, in different institutions or museums and galleries, queer spaces, underground spaces, public spaces, right? Really working and bringing these energies, these messages into community in different ways.
Thank you. Yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah.
I don't it's difficult to find people that want to take on the work. I'm really grateful to have met you because you are interested in doing the work and having the conversation and mutual healing and mutual learning. And I think that you touched on something really important about my practice is that I kind of have to force some of these conversations into the public sphere, into spaces that aren't necessarily set up to receive spiritual gifts, uh, that aren't that are resistant to the language of calling in ancestors. But I think that as an artist, I've learned some tricks. I've learned some visual cues and some aesthetic gestures that bring people into the work that that aren't explicitly spiritual, that aren't explicitly about my presence with the ancestors, but that force people to look in the direction that I'm trying to guide them. And it's been really valuable and it provokes conversations. We were talking the other day about something really important to me, and it's that my work isn't for everyone. However, everyone can be guided into the work, and it's not just my responsibility to guide people into the work. I also build community with one of the purposes of building that community, other than for mutual healing, of course, is to have other people who can help me guide people into the work. And then I also conspire with ancestors who work in very mysterious ways to also guide people into the work. I've had really useful conversations with other people who are people that I don't think that I will relate to, that say really interesting things about my artwork, who are guided to it in ways that I couldn't have predicted. I couldn't have known that it would be possible for them to be guided into the work. And I don't think that's my doing. I don't think that there's anything particularly interesting, strong, unique, whatever about the work. I really do believe that the work is a part of existing in like an ecosphere where it's me participating with the community and me and the community were participating with the ancestors, and it's not my work, it's not coming from me, it exists as a part of that structure.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel even us connecting and speaking is a part of that structure, right? That we were led to speak and connect around a studio visit. And then out of that conversation has emerged this yeah, incredible conversation around ancestral guidance. And I think it's really brought us together. And I'm also so honored to meet another artist, another divine non binary being who is traversing these webs, creating these connections as well. And also doing that hard work, as you said, of bringing these conversations into the public space. And I think that's also a big part of this is the practice is personal, it is emergent, it is creative, and it's also relational and public, and moves us into different roles and different positions that maybe we were not expecting or did not think were a part of the art practice process, or however you want to see it. And just truly grateful for that guidance. And I think also that really brings up another way that ancestors work with us as they guide us. They bring impulses and intuitions. And you offered a studio visit, and I definitely felt that ping from the ancestors being like, hey, move in this direction. And I'm so, so honored and grateful for us to have some time to connect and talk about this, because it feels really special. And I think it is really unique to be practicing in this way, and to also be bringing people together who are practicing in this way. And yeah, just so grateful for you, Michael, and grateful for your time, and for being in many ways an opening person here in this conversation, and preparing the ground for the other folks that are going to come and have this conversation, and just really feeling that divine guidance that you've been talking about in this process, and really feeling like your role both as a creative person and also in this project being just really divinely brought forward. And just so grateful to the ancestors, and want to take a moment just to thank them for kind of having us come together in this way. What a gift, what an honor. And also, if you're watching this, just know that the ancestors have also brought you here, and that we're here to connect with you. And definitely, we're looking and excited about expanding this conversation, weaving more people into this web. And so I'm definitely going to be including contact information for Michael if you want to connect with them. Also, information for myself too. We're open to seeing where the ancestors want to take this divine project, this divine conversation, knowing that we're planting seeds as future ancestors ourselves. We're planting those seeds for all the future ancestors that are also going to be coming to connect with us, because we're a part of a web, and this web is very nonlinear. So I also want to really expand on that too, is that we're working across time and space here.
Very much. And thank you so much. Like I said, I can't get enough of this conversation. It brings me life. It brings me joy. It makes everything about what I do feel necessary. So thank you. I really, really appreciate it. And the very, very best of luck and divine inspiration for the rest of your project.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So many blessings, and thank you for opening up this space. I'd love for us just to take a moment to just close the space that we've opened up here together. And if you don't mind, Michael, I would love to just have a little mantra that I'm taking off your shirt. I'd love for us to close by saying a little mantra together. Queer is punk, queer is joy.
There's more. Let's do all of it.
Yes, queer is rage, queer is beauty. Yes. Yes. Okay. So I'll count to 3, and we'll say it a few times
Yep.
together. 1, 2, 3. Queer is punk, queer is
Queer is
joy,
joy. Queer is rage.
queer is
Queer is
beauty,
beauty.
queer is
Queer is
punk,
punk.
queer
Queer
is
is joy.
joy, queer is
Queer is
rage,
rage.
queer is beauty, queer is
Queer is
punk,
punk. Queer
queer is
is joy.
joy, queer is
Queer is
rage,
rage.
queer is
Queer is
beauty.
beauty.
Ah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.